I'm just going ahead and sharing my screen here, guys. I hope everyone can see this. It is the presentation deck. If you do have any questions or you can't see anything, if anyone's having any troubles, please let me know using the chat or the Q&A today, and I can help you out there. Awesome. So just moving on, guys. Just some quick housekeeping before we get started. Please feel free to use the live transcripts for Zoom. Anyone that does need any closed captions, you can find that down in the meeting buttons down the bottom there. You should be able to see them in the hovering thing down the bottom there to help you out if you do need closed captions. The recording that we send after the presentation will include all of the slides as well as the closed captions as well. And yeah, again, I do encourage all types of questions, put them in now if there's actually something that you do want to cover, and I can, discuss that at the end of the presentation today. So I do see some familiar faces or familiar names, sorry, I should say, on the call today. But if you don't know me, I'm Matthew Alba. I'm one of the sales people here at Montecito. I've been in the space for about 2 years, coming from a content marketing background, as well as a UX design background. So I've worked across multiple different industries and verticals. You can see some of the companies on the screen here that we work with. Some of them are within the government space, as well as highly regulated markets, of which where content guidelines are really enforced, and there's a lot of emphasis in enforcing these writing guidelines, branding guidelines, and so forth. It's definitely something I could ramble on about quite a lot. So I decided to reach out to the marketing team and wanted to host a webinar that I was kind of had a bit of an interest in as well. And a lot of the people that I've spoken with over the last year, some of them are quite topical. So quick agenda, I'll be doing a quick introduction into what branding, style, and content guidelines are useful for your website. What are content guidelines and really why we recommend using them. There are 5 content guidelines specifically that I'll be covering a bit more in depth about, what ones that you should be implementing in your pre-published environments for 2023. And there will be a lot of resources towards the end to help you guys get started, as well as always the sales team here at Montecito can help with any consultation that you guys might need. So there is a quick pulse check. I do want to give out a little poll. So I will be coming back to this one. So if you could use the poll, I've just launched it there, just to get an understanding of how many people do you have reviewing the content before actually publishing, these website pages. I think it's kind of critical to understand these. Everyone is different. No right or wrong answer. It's just a curious question and something I'll be touching base on towards the end of the call. So I'll just keep that poll running throughout, and I'll close that towards the end just in case we do have any late attendees joining the call as well. So a quick introduction to why branding, style, and content guidelines are useful for your website, and what do we mean by the guidelines. Branding guidelines, I think a lot of people would understand what these are, but for example, they are, key misspellings in your branding, the way in which you write your organization's name or product information or any branded related information, any key case sensitives for any brands, checking for old brand terms, brand names without trademarks, these certain things as well. For content guidelines, these could be anything, and anything industry specific as well, anything brand specific as well. For example, removing derogatory words and be mindful of certain words that you are writing about when you are speaking about people with gender, age, disabilities, or even in the industry related space that might be sensitive, using more user-friendly words. Definitely something that I'm really interested in touching a bit more in throughout the call, but also with style guidelines as well. A lot of these things interrelate. They are quite beneficial when you look at them holistically, as well as the 5 guidelines that I'll be I'll be speaking about today, thinking about them holistically, and how they can, really improve the user experience and website visitors. Style guidelines, for example, checking for, any copyright information, privacy policy, terms and conditions, but also max word lengths, font sizes, those certain things, file sizes, things I'll be touching on a bit more about. And really, why are they important? It's good to understand, these things you might already know, but it is good to reiterate and understand why you guys actually have these guidelines in place to begin with. Accurate and up-to-date website content is essential for these branding, content, and style guidelines. Consistent brand and messaging obviously is important. Better website performance and user experience keeps content contributors accountable. Creates a bit more transparent approach between all the content editors you guys have. In regards to compliance, I know this is a big word that gets thrown around a lot, and people do get scared about certain compliance checks. And each industry is specific and unique. So it is important to understand that. And I'll be touching on the different ones that you guys might be familiar with in your space on one of the guidelines I speak about today. So what are content guidelines? There is 5 content guidelines that I've chosen today that, I wanted to delve in a bit more about into why you should have them and how we work through guidelines. So I can see a lot of people on the call today are either, Moncito users or have used the platform before, or you actually might have attended a sales call from myself, which you might have an understanding of how Moncito and how the product works. But just to understand, we do have a Moncito policies module. These help you set up guidelines that make sure that your content contributors adhere to. We scan your websites on the weekly basis, and we let you know if there are any violations in regards to your content policies that you do set up. Typically, we see a lot of people in the heavily regulated markets use the policies tool to scan the website content in pre-published environments to ensure that before even launching, your branding guidelines, your content guidelines and style guidelines, and your compliance guidelines are optimized before even launching. You can set these rules based off HTML tags, links, text, pages, titles, file sizes, and a lot more. And you can scan for these in pre-published environments, which is really what a lot of organizations in this space use them for, because these PDF documents or these Excel spreadsheets that you have of your branding guidelines, style guidelines are great on paper, but if they're not being enforced and not optimized in the pre-published environments, then sometimes there's no use of having them at all. Number 1 is no images over a certain size to ensure overall website performance. I'm sure everyone's heard of these terms before in regards to file sizes before. Some of the preset policies that we do have in Moncito are the no images over a certain size. And why is because, large images affect the bounce rates. They affect people on mobile devices, obviously affecting the core web vitals and overall your SEO score. But large images lead to an increased bounce rates, especially for people on mobile devices. If I think about myself as a website visitor or other people as a website visitor, if there's an image that comes about when I'm on my mobile, I actually don't start digesting any of the content or any of that until the website content becomes fully interactive. And this is from not having properly sized images. LCP, which is one of the core web vitals, people might know of this metric, measures the largest content element that's coming on the website, which is generally those images that take the longest to load. And that is because of the image hasn't properly rendered when they do load. These large images and these images that come about generally have some sort of layout shifts, and they can be quite distracting for website visitors. Can be quite off-putting for website visitors, especially for those people who might be in a rural area as well, accessing your website content. And that touches base on the first input delay and CLS there as well. These are obviously important parts of your SEO moving forward, with Google always changing the algorithm. And there's ways in which we can, improve this. One is obviously properly sized images, improving the experience of website visitors, the layout shift not changing, using the new WebP format instead of JPEG and PNG. it might be notable. I see when we scan websites, the way in which we crawl for content, I see JPEGs, PNGs being predominantly the most used format of images out there. And using WebP formats can actually roughly be 25% smaller in size of images. And it's just a real easy way in which you can, start implementing these across your website. The second content guideline that I do want to touch over is enforcing style and writing guidelines. Using content and improving readability scores so that, all target audiences can understand what you're writing about. It's been quite topical over the last, 36 months, I would say, since COVID, really. I've noticed in the industry, we're noticing a lot of people coming to your website. It's been the most visited asset for a lot of organizations. Your website has been, and people have shorter attention spans and spend less time on individual pages or on websites overall. That's the kind of data that we see from a lot of analytics these days. Disengaged readers actually drop off the site quicker. You can help optimize this by using, simpler words, plain English. There's a complex word guideline that's written by the Australian Government Style Manual. You'll find it at the end of the slideshow. But it's replacing those words like acquire with buy or get, using plain English, additional with more or extra. Depending on your target audience, it is always best practice to make sure that your content is accessible and inclusive for all potential target audiences that might be coming to your website. So I do highly recommend using plain English. These can really improve the ability for people using just skim reading your content to digest your content. And then that touches base on more things like passive voice and active voice. I've given 2 examples there. I would be interested to see if people actually know what passive voice and active voice is, but I'm not really going to go into the differences. But with the webinar was attended by Sam. You can see that this is using passive voice. I'm speaking about the action and was performed by the subject, which was Sam. So Sam attended the webinar using active voice, becomes a bit more clear, concise, and to the point. And when you are writing in these certain terminologies and even using plain English, touching base on the other guideline there, it becomes very, very understandable from the very beginning of the sentence what actually is happening, or what the content, or what this sentence or paragraph actually means. And this can really help with people who are just scanning websites. Us as content editors, marketing communications people who are publishing content, we probably don't notice these things, but website visitors, when they come to your website, will actually be skim reading, scanning the website, scrolling the website, and trying to find for keywords and things that just poke out to them, for them to digest. And using passive voice or active voice in most instances when you're writing content just becomes a bit more clear and concise, and just engages people when you use plain English. Setting rules around these max word lengths, long paragraphs, and official languages is also important for also ties into the other two points I've made above, about just improving the experience of website visitors when they're on your website. Consistent branding. Once you bring website visitors to your website, it's obviously great to keep your brand message consistent across the website. As I said before, website visitors are always scanning and scrolling, and they actually tend to notice things that you, as a website contributor, might not notice every day. Inconsistent branding can obviously lead to confusion, both internal and external stakeholders. And consistent branding is key for awareness. You as an organization obviously want to be a trusted source of information. In most instances, you're thought of a thought leader, especially if you are a regulatory body, you are in providing a product or service, and you want to ensure people understand and trust the content that you're producing, and that can come from consistent branding. Ensuring people using your company name, as well as product names with trademarks, is obviously important if you are selling other products or are mentioning other products or brands or organizations across your website, ensure they have trademarks against them. The brand name is, and you can run into some compliance issues down the track as well. For international organizations, this is also important. Are you speaking to people who might be using wrong date formats? The US obviously write their dates differently. If you are displaying times, make sure you display the right times for each region. Australian Eastern Standard Time, Australian Western Standard Time, New Zealand Standard Time, or Singapore Standard Time, or wherever you are based, and the region you're specific about. Why are call to actions important? This is an obvious one. Call to actions and should be clear and concise across your website. They should be visible. After you are devoting the time, the effort, and the resources you've put into promoting your services and products, the last thing you want website visitors to leave with is without taking action. And by encouraging the visitor to stay on the website and engage with your content, can actually boost conversion rates. On CEDO space, the software space, where it's a lot of demand gen purpose, book a demo, subscribe to the newsletter, shop now, find out more. These certain call to actions can actually really engage website visitors to stay on your website longer. A call to action can keep website visitors engaged, and all the content you guys are producing can lead to better experiences and conversion rates. Promote your content. You guys are writing a lot of this. Download the guide, get manual, see handbook. You can see those policies, those preset ones in the Moncedo policies module. You can see that are there. And obviously why they're important is it just allows for people to dive deeper. It really encourages website visitors to dive deeper and engage with your website content. Moving on, in regards to the industry and regulatory compliance, each industry is different and requires specific compliance measures. Back onto the call to actions, displaying a CTA in most instances is a compliance measure. One of them is contact us. Always read the PDS, terms and conditions, the privacy policy, those certain things. Disclaimers, whatever space you may be in, privacy policies, accessibility statements, consent managers, or if you are in the more regulated space, having, fees, costs, product disclosure statements, terms and conditions, allergies, and so forth, obviously a requirement for you to have across all products and services or all offerings you guys have. You can even run into some issues if you don't even actually have your registration numbers. Simple things like ABN, the RTO, provider numbers, business numbers, etc. They're obviously important. Regulatory compliance, there are guides like ASIC if you are in the financial space, the therapeutic goods advertising code. That is obviously important for healthcare professionals or healthcare professional marketing communications people. So I wanted to go back onto the poll. Hopefully you guys can see the results in understanding, what other people have. Generally, the majority looks like around 62% of people have around 2 to 3 people reviewing the content before it even goes published. Why I kind of asked this question is, through human error, we do notice content issues across our website. Everyone sees these, outdated content, outdated branding guidelines even as well. Old logos as well, we can see them. But when you have, 2 or 3 people reviewing your content and, these misspellings, broken links, content issues slip through the cracks, so might your content guidelines. And having everyone up to date with what your actual compliance guidelines, content guidelines, style guidelines, and branding guidelines are is really important. And to make sure that you guys ensure that these actually do get forced, has an overall impact and can obviously lead to better website performance in optimizing content, and something to take note about moving forward, next year or even starting now. So the resources to really help you guys get started, there are so much out there, through a simple Google search or simple, check back with Moncito as well. There are so many free resources we have. But in regards to the policies module, these are ways in which that you can actually enforce and automate and streamline the process of enforcing these content branding and style guidelines. You can see a lot of G2 reviews and how it helps other organizations. It's obviously probably the most utilized feature for a lot of organizations that sign up to Moncito in this space to help them optimize their content. So take a look at some of the G2 reviews and how it's helped them. Resources to get you guys started. So in terms of Moncito, you guys will all get a copy of this slide deck, and you can find this on our website as well. Understanding content policies, web governance handbook, website accessibility handbook, even the website redesign handbook. If you guys have any big plans for your website in terms of a re-platform, a rebrand, or a redesign, we've seen our website redesign handbook, people actually just change the name Moncito and use their own organization's name because they found it quite useful. There are a bunch of free tools in Moncito that help you guys get started, like accessibility statement generators. It'd be great to start implementing them. External resources, this is the Australian Style Manual. You will find other links to style manuals. These are obviously provided by the Australian government, and people of all likes of the world that I speak with, based in Singapore, Hong Kong, India, New Zealand, actually follow some of these Australian style manuals because English might not be everyone's primary language. It's in most instances is their secondary language, and making sure that your content is inclusive by using plain English is really important, and something that I would like to get everyone start thinking about moving forward with your content. There is a Moncito's financial services policy guide, which is really key to understanding for all types of organizations in regards to compliance, but especially those in heavily regulated markets. It doesn't just touch on the ASIC regulatory guideline. It touches on a whole bunch of other things, like you can see there, business names, branding guidelines, style guidelines, whatever compliance checks that you guys need to. It just helps you guys keep yourself accountable in regards to compliance. We'd love to help out. If there are any branding guidelines, style guidelines, writing guidelines that you guys do have, you can get a free scan from Moncito. Seeing a demo of the Moncito's policy module can help you guys just identify any inconsistencies. If you're already a Moncito customer, which I can see a lot of them, on the call today, reach out to your customer service managers. There is an in-app chat support, which they can help you, build out these policies to make sure that you comply with any content guidelines and writing guidelines, or whatever guidelines that you guys have internally. We can find ways in which that we can crawl your website to make sure that you are enforcing these rules. Q&A session, please feel free to use the chat support, but I will, open up the chat to any questions that anyone might have in regards to what you've seen today, or if there's anything that you wanted to understand a bit more about what I spoke about, feel free to use the Q&A. So no questions coming through the panel at the moment. I will just give everyone a couple of minutes, but I do appreciate, I do have one question. There are programs that can scan your website for image size and further even resize or change the format. Yeah, of course there are. There are, a bunch of tools that can help you do that. In regards to compressing files, that's another thing as well, to improve the format of them. But there are different instances where you can check for those. Obviously, through the Moncito policies, you can check for any file size. That can be PDF, that can be image size, that can be anything, to make sure that you guys are implementing those. You can also check through, performance checks if you guys are, your page load speed, I mean, in regards to performance. You can also check when you guys are not using properly sized images on pages as well. And you can monitor that through automated reporting. So, feel free to also reach out to me. My email address is in the slide deck. I can also link you I believe that these tools are not compatible with all CMSs. That's a good question. In regards to tools being compatible for your CMSs, just give me 1 second. So in regards to Moncedo is compatible with all CMSs. We crawl for everything within the public source code, right? So everything that is HTML based, we can crawl for these, and we can pick up a lot of these issues. However, the deep link and integration with some of the CMSs that you might have, custom built ones, can be complicated. But if it is within the HTML and public available, we can crawl for these. And I'm happy to answer that question a bit more a bit later as well, Sagar. Thanks, Rebecca. I can also reach out to you after this as well. Appreciate you taking the time. But yeah, does anyone else have any questions? Cindy. Yeah, so Cindy, how does the consultation work, and what's the procedure for an application? So, I assume you're obviously not a Moncedo customer at the moment. And if you guys want to see, you want to see a demonstration of the tool, it is quite an interactive session where we crawl your public website, and we let you know about any of the content issues that are on the website as well. But it is kind of a consultation and understanding what your kind of challenges are, what challenges you guys have in regards to content. This is obviously a webinar about content guidelines, branding guidelines, and style guidelines, and how we can help you guys enforce that. And if that is a challenge for you, especially if you are in a compliance or regulated market, you want to understand a way in which you can help streamline and automate that, especially in pre-published environments, we can help you understand that as well. So how the consultation works is basically, you reach out to us, either via an email or via my email or via our website, and we can provide you with just set up a 20-minute consultation time and understand, how the tool works and if there's, a fit there. Thanks so much for the questions, guys. I will just stay on a couple more minutes to see if anyone else has any questions that might be specific about what I spoke about today. If there is something that you guys are struggling with in regards to content guidelines, feel free to reach out. However, I didn't cover all of them today. There is a broad range of them. But yeah. Thanks for joining, guys. You can see my my email here today. It is at the bottom there. And yeah, honestly, feel free to reach out, because this is something that, I love talking about. Branding guidelines, style guidelines, all this sort of stuff is great. I speak with a lot of different types of organizations on a daily basis, and it is great to start engaging in these conversations and how best practice and other industries are operating. Not just industry specific to yourself, but also how other organizations are building out their branding guidelines and style guidelines and writing guidelines. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me via email. Yeah, I'll be happy to answer any more of your questions or even just have a chat. Cindy, is there any tools to generate branding content guidelines? Great question. Look, in Moncedo, we have preset policies. There's over about 30 different preset policies that you can actually enforce. And those have come from best practice. Those comes from already just click through a couple clicks of a button, how you can identify any large images, any large PDFs, any large files across your website. We can also help you set rules on those maxed word lengths, long paragraphs to identify those, because people on mobile devices, it becomes a negative experience for them. when they are, scrolling your website. It's not a positive experience. We can actually help you identify for any, HTML tags, links, keywords, assets across the website. So those certain words that you guys don't want to have mentioned across your website content because they may be sensitive to the type of audience that you're writing about, or they may, in a compliance guideline, you actually can't mention these certain words. Let's find out all instances where these words are mentioned so we can go ahead and remove them, archive them, or replace it with a more user-friendly word that may be, less sensitive to our target audience. So Cindy, yes, there is a broad range of branding content style guidelines within the Montito platform, which you guys can help enforce these. I would love to, share with you obviously what we have in our guidelines. But if you are a customer on the call today, feel free to reach out to our customer success managers to understand what people in your industry are actually implementing across their website. They actually can be, built themselves. They may not be actually in the preset guidelines, but it'd be great to understand what actually other people in your industry are using, because Montito is obviously used by a number of different organizations within the space. I hope that answered your question, Cindy, and thanks for everyone else on the call. I'll just keep the webinar open for a couple more minutes to understand if there is any other further questions that I spoke about today. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you, Brian. Thanks so much, guys. I'll end the webinar today. Thanks again so much for your time, guys. And feel free to connect. Happy to have a further conversation offline as well. Take care.